Welcome to episode 43 of the FoodGrads Podcast, the podcast where we explore careers in the food, beverage, and agricultural industries. I'm your host, Veronica Hislop, a molecular science graduate student and career partner with FoodGrads. This week on the podcast, I interviewed Ariful Islam, a food safety professional who currently works for the federal government of Canada. In this episode, Ariful walked me through his career journey, coming from Bangladesh to Canada, and why he decided to get 2 master's degrees rather than a PhD, and the skills that he picked up during that time. Ariful shared with me his difficulties finding a job after graduation, but talked about how networking was so important in his job search, and how he used LinkedIn. Ariful gave some really tangible advice that students, or really anyone, should be doing throughout their career. Finally, Ariful talked to me about what it's like working in a food manufacturing facility and the daily tasks that he did, which was a nice in-depth insight that we normally get. So, enough with that introduction. Let's get on with the show. So, thank you so much, Ariful. I was really excited when you reached out to me and when I saw the rich history that you've had for your career and what you're doing now. I knew that there was going to be some stuff that we can dive deeper into. So, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm happy to join.
Okay, well, to get us started, I would love to know your career journey. And so, would you be able to walk me through that, please?
Before that, I just want to say disclaimer. Basically, now I'm working for the federal government. I'll be sharing some, but those are my personal opinion, and the views expressed today are not those of the government of Canada nor the Canadian Food Inspection Agency. Those are my personal opinion. Okay. I did my master's from the University of Manitoba in human nutrition science. And then I was looking for a job and I started for working for Steritech, Rent-to-Kill. It's a leading food safety and third-party certification company, auditing company. I started my job there. I moved to Regina, Saskatchewan, and I worked there for around 6 months. And then I got transferred to Calgary with the same company. And it was actually a great experience. I was doing audits for different grocery stores, different restaurants. I was teaching them, training them. And then I got certification, different certification for food safety. And the most popular or famous, I think, and the CPFS, Professional Food Safety. So I got that. I like that job, but it was lots of traveling. So yeah, I traveled so many cities of Manitoba, Saskatchewan, almost all cities of Saskatchewan, so many cities of Alberta, most cities of BC, Ontario. Even I went to Yellowknife.
I just want to dive that into a little bit more detail. When you say that you were traveling, was this to help different businesses with their food safety? And because there was so many different ones, that's why you had to travel around?
So it was all part of when I was working for Steritech. And although I started in Winnipeg first, worked there a few weeks, and then moved to Regina, Saskatchewan because I was hired for Regina. So you work individually mostly. You get help from your co-workers or your managers, but actually you go in person and individually for audit to different restaurants and grocery stores. And sometimes you have to cover a big area, and sometimes you help voluntarily to other cities, other areas. And also for training, you travel a lot. Most of the trainings are in Toronto area or Vancouver area. So that's why.
Oh, okay. Wow, that sounds like an adventure.
Exactly. And then in 2018, I got married and I was thinking, okay, it's too much traveling. And I got some experience of retail food safety, but I took some courses on HACCP, GMP, sanitation. I was looking for more industry related jobs, manufacturing jobs. So I don't need to travel that much and I can gain different experience. Unfortunately, that time, Calgary job market was not that great.
Oh,
Yeah, so I was thinking of moving to Ontario because there are so many food manufacturing plants in Ontario, right?
for sure.
And and I was interested in quality control or food safety. So I applied, like I was applying like almost every weeks. And after applying so many jobs, some interviews, because I was in Calgary, but I was applying for Ontario. So they prefer local candidates, right? With
Oh,
similar experience, similar backgrounds. It was hard to get interviews or even to get the job. And finally, I got the job, biscuit clerk in Cornwall, Ontario, in their quality control department. Mm, they mainly do like cookies, granola birds, fruit birds.
mhm.
It's a big company, but the Cornwall plant was like new. So it was interesting. I worked there for a year, but actually I wanted to move up because I have two masters and I already gained some experience. I was looking for other opportunities, and then I got a job at Lactalis Canada. It was the Kraft before. Lactalis Canada, also known as Parmalat Canada. So in Ingleside, Ontario. So it's a cheese company. So they make like different kinds of cheese and powdered cheese as well. So I worked as a chemistry lab analyst. Like I have science degree, I love science, so I was able to do some lab work there because my master's was research based. So I enjoyed that job. I was working for the private companies, but my passion or my intention was to get into the government. So I was applying, and government jobs takes time. I applied long ago after interviews, like written exam, interview, background check, and all that. Finally, I got the job at the Canadian Food Inspection Agency.
Okay. Wow. I have to say though, I do appreciate you being open and honest about applying for a lot of jobs. I know it's maybe not something that people like to share, but I do think people can appreciate just knowing that it's not them because sometimes it can be really tough to find a job and discouraging. And I can only imagine how you felt, like you said, applying to Ontario-based jobs when you're all the way in Calgary. And that's something I've never personally experienced having to do. So I give you kudos for doing that because that is a big feat and to stay like persistent.
Right, yeah.
And one of the things, again, you mentioned about master's degree, and you mentioned you had two master's degree. And as a student, I love to a little bit dive into that being in the graduate field. Could you maybe just talk about what you did for your two master's thesis and why you even decided to take two? Because that to me is ambitious in itself as well.
So I did my bachelor and master's from Bangladesh, my home country. And basically those were focused on food science, food technology, and a little bit of nutrition too. And initially, I wanted to be a teacher. So I was thinking of, okay, higher education, basically PhD. So I was looking for a degree, like I had a dream to get a North American degree for their reputation and great program so I can learn more. So I was applying to US and I was applying to Canada as an international student. The time zone is different and it's tough to get into get admission into North American universities sometimes and to get scholarship. So I worked hard and I got a research assistantship in US school, and also I got fellowship from the University of Manitoba. It's like full scholarship. It covered my tuition, accommodation and everything. I was able to save some money too. Yeah, thank you. And at the University of Manitoba, so my professor was very nice and the lab was great. I was working on research on effect of high protein diet on kidney and serum oxalipins, and I was working with rat. So it was an interesting study, and with the help of LCMS, SPLC, and GC, and it was a degree on human nutrition science. And my paper also got published in a good quality journal, Nutritional Biochemistry. So impact factor, I think it was around 4.5 or 5. And the reason I did the master's because I had an intention to do PhD,
Mhm.
but from, let's say, for international student, especially for life science program, professor or university prefers to have a master's first, and then you can transfer your master's to PhD,
Mhm.
or you can finish your master's and then you can start your PhD. Since I got this scholarship and I love research, I wanted to learn more, build my career, so I decided to do my second master's. And actually, I almost started PhD, but for international student, there are some other struggles too. If you are in work permit, or if you're a student, and for international student, you have to pay more tuition. I think 3 times higher than Canadians or local. And there are some scholarships are only for Canadians or for permanent resident, not for student. So I was thinking, okay, if I can get like work, some experience, I can get permanent resident, and that way I'll have some work experience. I'll have my Canadian permanent resident or Canadian citizenship, and also I'll be open for other scholarship, or I can pay less tuition. And there were some teachers, and I was teaching assistant as well. The teacher also was also international student before, so she also said, okay, gain some work experience, because if you do PhD and then after PhD, if you can do postdoc or if you can get into academia as an assistant professor, that's fine, okay, but it's hard, it's very tough in Canada, but not impossible. Compared to US, there are so many schools in the US, but not in Canada.
Yeah.
But if you don't go into academia with PhD, if you want to go into industry, it will be very difficult because you are overqualified. Like you have a PhD, but you don't have any industry experience. So they don't want to pay you more.
Yeah.
Uh, and also they will get bachelor or master student with same pay and they can do the same job. But if to hire you, they have to pay you more. Also, you don't have any experience. So, those are the things to consider.
I take for granted sometimes being a Canadian student and the struggles that I just don't even think about in my own the perspectives of international when I talk to my lab mates, because a lot of them are international and it doesn't even occur to me. And hearing a conversation, I'm really hoping that my industry experience that I decided to go and work for a year is not gonna it's gonna be a good thing, and me not going straight into my graduate degree is gonna bite me because I'm trying to transfer to a PhD right now. So I'm in the process of that little examination. But it's interesting too about how there's other factors that individuals have to take into consideration other than just I want to do a PhD or I want to do graduate. It's unfortunate things like money do play a role in how international students do pay a lot more. And it's just, I don't know where I'm going with this, but I'm just sharing my
Yeah,
thoughts
right.
about the thing. And just, yeah, it's crazy how there's so many other confounding factors, but it seems like you've worked through, at least you did get that bit of a graduate's experience. And I'm wondering, with doing some of this graduate work, were you able to apply some of maybe the skills? Like I know you mentioned HPLC, or maybe the mindset of a graduate student. Did you find any of that helped you going into the industry?
Yeah, so initially I was applying for lab jobs only because I have lab experience. I know about good laboratory practices. I have WHMIS, WHMI, right? I'm familiar with the lab equipments and the lab techniques. I can develop SOP or so I was applying for lab jobs and I was interested to do only lab jobs. But in Manitoba, I was in Winnipeg. The job opportunities were not that great. So I had some interviews, but unfortunately I did not get any job that time. But I got skills. You work in the lab also, you work in a team, sometimes you work individually. There are some transferable skills you can apply to industry. Working under pressure, working individually, working as a team, your dedication, sometimes working overtime, you are doing your research too. So you think, okay, I'll be done by 5, but something doesn't work out and you are working late night. I had to do that. And sometimes you're coming in the weekend to continue your lab work. So those skills, working overtime, flexibility, transferable skills help to get into industry. And I got my first job directly, like from, I graduated, I think, and then I got my first job in March. I graduated in February. Yeah.
You're giving me some flashbacks of my last week, so maybe don't want to talk about that. But no, as someone who has worked as a graduate and just doing this podcast, there are transferable skills. Just interjecting my own advice here, but it's good to keep track of this type of stuff. Like I personally journal in a way that way when I go back and reflect to talk to employers, that I don't forget what I do, because I think that as students, we get graduate students, we forget the skills that we actually have, and it's up to us to notice. And now, again, this is like pointing me to another direction, is that this is why it's good to sometimes have mentors in your life or someone that you can actively talk with. And of course, your supervisor is your mentor, but having someone outside of the field, because they might be able to identify the types of skills that work. And that this tangent leads to me because I know that you have participated in a lot of mentorship type things. And I was wondering about what your experience has been, and maybe we can just start from there.
Sure. For job application, and especially for international student, the back home resume, cover letter writing may be different than Canada. And you are doing basically graduate study. You don't know that much about industry culture or what the recruiters look for or what hiring managers are looking for. So I believe mentor helps a lot and plays a crucial role in your career journey. I'll say basically someone can take help from a career counseling office. Every university or college have a mentorship program or career counseling office. So I went there. I attended some workshops. So initially they helped me to build my resume. Another thing, there are some good positive things I learned from there, but also they will provide you general advice, or they will not customize your resume. They will say, but they are not expert in your field. So they will give you like in general recommendations. But if you want a job in food industry or in the lab or in auditing field, your resume should be different, right? Your skills. So you need to customize your resume based on the job qualifications. So that's why you need a mentor who has some sort of like experience related to your discipline. So you can get general advice from the workshop, from the career counseling department, but also look for a mentor from your related to your discipline. I believe that you should look for some skills of the mentor. Mentor should be knowledgeable. Mentor should be able to give you constructive feedback. Mentor should be honest, candid. Mentor should have a good network and should be able to help you to find resources. And also, mentor should be willing to share his or her skills, knowledge, and expertise. Should have a positive attitude. Sometimes you can get frustrated. Oh, I'm applying, like I already applied like 50 jobs. I'm not hearing. So you need some motivation, right? So your mentor can help that time. Sometimes if you need some constructive feedback, some constructive criticism based on your interview, your mentor should value your opinion, your initiative, should motivate you. So you need to look for these categories of a mentor. And I can share my experience. We all know, right? LinkedIn plays a very good role these days, right?
Yes.
So in 2015, I started my master's in 2015. Even that time, or close to my end of my degree, I was not active in LinkedIn. I had an account, but I was not doing anything. And then in our lab, there was a postdoc, Samantha. She's an assistant professor at UFM now. She was so helpful. And she said, like, Ariful, you need to be active in LinkedIn, like, comment, and share, and seek help, get connection, talk to people, send messages, connect with people. After that, I started working on my LinkedIn, and then I made some connections, and I was talking just before. So you need help from your field. So I reached out to some people. I know some of them are busy, they did not reply. I sent some emails, I sent personal messages, but some of them they replied. They just told me, hey, apply there, do that, don't do that. So something like that. And one of them asked my resume, and I sent him my resume. Yeah, I was in Winnipeg. He's from Toronto, and he said, "Okay, your resume looks good, but I have some comments, and if you don't mind, I want to edit it." I said, "Yeah, please go ahead." And he has so many experience in food safety or quality control. He helped me to customize my resume, and I was amazed, and I was so happy. I'm so grateful to my colleague or lab mate like Samantha. She also said, join some workshop, some seminars, and join some membership of different organizations, right?
Ye-
Like Canadian Institute of Food Science and Technology. You can learn from there. You can meet some people, like those are the leader of industry or in a good position. So I joined a couple of organizations that helped actually.
Yeah. You took my question away that I was gonna point out where can we find some places for mentorship. But yeah, I've also had a lot of positive experiences and I've done mentorship through the Formalized, through the Women in Food Industry Management, which is a mentorship association that takes place in the GTA for like women in the food industry. And that has been amazing. And I got connected to one of my own mentors and the immense help that I've had through it. She's been we've been cheerleaders and she's pointed out some of my own things that I need to work on. And it's just really nice to have someone that's in your corner. And I also find as well that if you find the right mentor, especially in the industry, if they're not directly your boss or something, I feel like you can almost confide in them a little bit more, your frustrations, or like you said, that you can be honest and candid with you. And it's something that you might not get in other aspects of your life without having that trusted mentor because again, it's the key is having that trust between the two of you. And I've heard as well, I haven't been too much on the mentor side, being that mentor, but I've also found that I've heard that there's been some benefits for them as well.
Yeah, like you were talking about like the WFIM. I also got the invitations. I joined their recent event.
I have to watch the recording still. It was during one of my lab meetings, so I wasn't able to attend, but they are an amazing group.
They're amazing. Yeah. And also through LinkedIn, or I'm also helping some of the recent grads. So being a mentor, I'd like to add one point, paid mentorship, and there are some free mentorship too. So initially, like since you are a student or you just graduated, so you don't want to spend too much money. So look for those organizations, and there are some free mentorship program too. Or so look for that first. I hope you'll find someone. And if that doesn't work, then you may think of paid mentorship, but I'll first go for the free mentorship program.
Mhm. Yeah, I've heard about like paid, and I know that people who have paid for the mentorship have found benefit for them. But again, even from what I've heard from them, don't start off with that. It's more so it benefits, from my understanding, more people who've kind of been in the industry, who've got a better footing of things and need that more direct. They know exactly what they want to work on, but maybe I'm wrong with that.
Oh, you're right. Yeah.
Okay. And one other thing, like I want to add as well, because even for me, I think that students, you're paying for the tuition and all that, and these career centers are there to help you. And in a way, you're already paying for it through your tuition. And even if you're an undergraduate, if you're in college or any of those types of things, and they're really useful. If you can start really early and just maybe put aside like 1 hour per week or something just to attend those workshops, like even this week, I know it's resume building, but I finally went to my graduate writing center and I've never done that before. And it was super helpful the 1 hour. And I'm going, why wouldn't I have done this before? Like it's to my own benefit. So there's so much resources at the universities and colleges.
I totally agree. Yeah, yeah. So there are so many resources, and you can get help from the career counseling office. You can get help from your colleagues, lab mates, your professor, instructor. I know you are doing PA. You can get help from your professor too. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. One of the things that I wanted to bring it back around to is food safety in general, just from your past experiences. And I I don't know. I just wanted to know about what that experience feels like working in you transitioned from traveling and that and then you started to work in food manufacturing. Could you maybe talk about what that type of environment feels like maybe from a food safety perspective? I guess where I'm trying to go with this is just that when I worked in like a food manufacturing building, it was kind of nothing like what I had been, it was a really large building and there's a lot of moving parts. I guess I want to know like how did it feel working in a lab and maybe is that a good place for you to jump off or do I need
Yeah,
to
yeah, sure. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It's a good question.
Okay.
Manufacturing plants, it could be like meat plant, it could be dairy plant, it could be cookies, biscuit plant, or fresh fruits and vegetable processing plant. So there are different plants. So I work in the quality control and also worked in the lab of different industries. So it's different. Basically, the quality role or food safety role is very important because there are production people, there are sanitation people, there are quality people and management or HR. But the quality involves like shipping department will receive ingredient, quality will jump in, they'll grab some samples. They will do some lab testing in their own lab, or sometimes they send it to third-party lab, and then they'll say, okay, good to go. And then production people will start production. So before the production, again, quality department will check the line, like pre-op inspection. So they'll check whether it's properly cleaned. They'll check whether the metal detector or the X-rays are working properly, the packaging, right packaging, if there is camera, the code is set and it's working properly. So and the packaging, the correct packaging, quality is everywhere. And then even during the production, so usually in an 8-hour shift or 12-hour shift, a quality control technician or a quality control technologist, even quality control supervisor. So they're responsible for receiving ingredient, they're responsible for lab testing, they're responsible for environmental swab, they're responsible for the pre-op inspection, they do the quality check from, let's say, if it's a cookie plant, from dough mixing to the CCP, critical control point, the X-rays checking, and then the checking of the finished product, the lot code, and the checking proper packaging. And then they need to enter information either in like paper form or in their iPad or computer. Like there's some business softwares like SAP nowadays companies are using. So it's the quality person. They're very busy. You can get to know everything, and you have a very important role to play. It's exciting. And then the other part is lab. So if you're in the quality, you are working everywhere, right? Like you're
Yes.
going to the warehouse, you're going to the production, and also working in the office. But if you are only dedicated for lab persons, you're working in the lab only. That is like quite different. You don't meet too many people, but if you like safe, sound, like quiet environment, interacting with only few people, it's a good place to work. You are working with all the chemicals, you are working with the finished product or raw material. You can sometimes it's also interesting.
Sorry. So one of the things that you mentioned environmental swab. Would you be able, like, what exactly is that? And I guess like what happens if something goes wrong? Like, how does that work?
Okay, yeah. Sanitation people will clean the line, right? All the equipment and the line, the belt. So do that. And then what quality people do, so they have the ATP swab or the environment swab. So they just swab that and they look for the bacterial count. They look for it, like it depends. So sometimes once a week, depending on the sanitation schedule or the product. If it is a dairy, usually they do daily. If it is a cookie plant, like the risk of bacteria contamination is less because it's a dry product. Sometimes they do once a month, and then like a complete count or some salmonella swab.
Okay, so they're looking for the amount of bacterial, and then they're looking for A, like how much bacteria is there, and then like B, like what kinds are also there, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And then so I guess they did their check, the quality technician, and then they found out, oh, this has too much micro sorry, it has,
Microbia. Yeah.
yeah, it has microbia. I guess they would say that we can't start the new line of production, like this has to be cleaned again.
Right. Yeah.
Oh.
So sometimes what happen, sanitation people, they will do the cleaning, and at the end of the cleaning before starting line, so they'll call the quality, and then quality tech or quality sometimes supervisor, they'll go and then they will do the quick swab, and you can see the numbers instantly. And then based on that, it depends on, let's say if it is a plastic, if it's a metal, the number that will be varied. Then if it is good to go, you'll say, yeah, it's fine, it's clean. If it is not, then I'll tell them to clean again. So they'll do the sanitation all over again, and then we'll test again. And that's like instant. And some other testing, you have to send it to the other lab for, microbial testing, and it will take some time, like 1 day or 2 day or sometimes 3 days. And based on that, if it is negative, it's good. If not, then they keep the product on hold.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so it's definitely an important type, and I guess different so I guess there's standards that's put out between like how I guess what I'm wondering is where do these numbers come from in terms of like I could be totally wrong with this, but maybe it's 500 count. Is that set out by the food safety bodies, or is it just
Yeah, like
generally accepted?
yeah, it's like standard. There are standard numbers, so they go by these numbers. So for bacterial count or for this bacteria, if it is sometimes if it is positive, or sometimes there's a number for different based on if it's plastic or metal or what kind of food product. And for hand swab, so for equipment swab, so those are different set numbers, so they go by that.
Okay, okay. And I could imagine, though, being in a role like that in terms of, I guess I'm just thinking about the production and I'm thinking about the quality, and there could probably be a little bit of, I don't want to say confrontation, because I know that everyone wants at the end of the day the product to be safe, but how, if a quality technician, or maybe you've seen it in your role, found, oh, this is wrong, did they just tell their supervisor? Did they tell production? How did they make sure that everything works out in the end?
Yeah, sure. So it's like a collaboration work. So if they find something, they can, they will notify the quality supervisor, or in some cases there is no supervisor, they'll notify the quality manager, and also production team lead or production manager are basically on the floor, so they can immediately tell them. And usually production team lead and production manager, they know if quality finds something, they have to comply and they have to follow. So they'll follow that. And so they'll correct that, or the product will be kept on hold until the problem is solved.
Okay, that makes sense. That's great. And I guess with that, I always like to ask my guests, what piece of advice would you give to a student looking to get into a career similar to yours, or maybe just general advice going into the food industry, or just general life advice?
If someone wants to build a career in food safety, quality control related, I would say get some certifications, hazard analysis and critical control point,
Mhm.
GMP or sanitation. There are PCQI, or there are internal audit certification. You can get the certification from, let's say, SGS, or there are some other bodies, and also from different universities or colleges, certified food scientist certification program, University of Guelph, different colleges. Try to get some certifications. It will help. It's for everyone. Like, connect with people, be active in LinkedIn. Let's say if you have an interview coming, you can see who else is working and try to reach out to them, ask for recommendation, ask for some insights. That will help build network. With COVID these days, I know it's hard to meet in person, but everything is happening virtually. Send an email, cold calling, LinkedIn, another option. And I know it's sometimes frustrating. You are applying, but you are not hearing back. Try to find out if your resume is up to date, if it is customized. It takes time to apply for jobs. So apply as many as you can. Apply on Indeed, apply on LinkedIn, or even directly go to the company website, career site, and apply there. Let's say you are in a city, see that much opportunities. Think of relocation. If you're open to relocation, you have more opportunities, you have more doors open. Do some volunteering activities where your resume will be good and you will meet some people. They can give some references. While you are doing your undergrad or diploma, try to do some co-op. And also for the government, there are FSWEP program for a student. You can join there, and you can get a job and you can gain some experience. So
Yeah.
it will help you.
Could you just quickly say, you said an acronym, FW,
Oh, yeah, sure. It's Federal Student Work Experience Program,
okay, thank you.
FSWEP. And another thing is getting a job into the private sector and getting a job into the government sector is different. You have to create an account for GC websites. You have to answer all the screening questions very carefully in details with time, with your experience. Applying for the government job is time consuming and you have to spend that time and keep applying. And also there's a little bit different interview skills, like private jobs and government jobs. They ask questions differently, behavioral, sometimes scenario based. They prefer star techniques, situation, task, action, result. So try to learn those things from, you can Google them, you can ask help from your mentors. These will help.
That's a wonderful advice, and I think that I never even thought about there's differences between if you're applying again to that government to an industry job about the screening questions. So just, I think at the end of the day, just put the time in and make sure that you block off time continuously. Just keep at it. It takes time. And if you do it early, like you said, you graduated and you were able to get it within the month, but all that. But that was amazing advice, and I really hope that people take it. So because we're coming out to the end of the podcast, I have to ask one more question with the theme of everything. Where can people find you?
So people can find me. I'm available in LinkedIn. You can reach out to me, and also they can email me. My email is arif21mbstu@gmail.com. It's also available in LinkedIn. Ottawa. So if you're in Ottawa, yeah.
I'll make sure to link that in the show notes. So thank you so much, Ariful, for coming on the show. Just a lot of great advice, that you've personally persevered, you've put in the hard work, and obviously with your career that it shows. So thank you for coming on the show.
You're very welcome. I really appreciate the time, and I wish best of luck for you and for all the job seekers.
That was episode 43 of the FoodGrads Podcast. All the notes to the podcast can be found on the FoodGrads blog or by clicking on the Student and Grads tab on the homepage. There you can find any notes to past or future episodes. Do you know anyone you would like me to interview on the show? Perhaps yourself, or maybe a specific career path you would like me to explore? Then reach out and let me know. You can email me at veronica@foodgrads.com or any of the FoodGrads social media channels. Hope to hear from you. It was great having Ariful on the show and gaining a better understanding of what it's like being an international student. As someone who's only gone to Ryerson, a school that's relatively close to where I grew up and live, I've never really had to, well, I haven't ever had to, I've never had to think about the things that Ariful has done or considered while he was going, or the things that he had to consider while going through his degree. Doing a graduate degree takes a lot of perseverance, but being an international student on top of that, it just takes it to a level, it just takes it to another level, and I really commend Ariful for that. I also really appreciated Ariful giving out so much useful advice in this episode about resources that someone can use to help in their careers. Mentorship, resume building, interviewing, all these types of things, they get mentioned because they are important for your career journey and they're indispensable. It might be really frustrating, but it really does pay to tailor each of your resumes to a job. Which also reminds me that I have to spend some time updating my resume and LinkedIn profile. So if that's you, like me, use this as your reminder to remind yourself you got to do the same thing. Anyways, that's it for this week's episode. Thank you everyone so much for listening, and I will see you next time.